Greetings, brothers and sisters. So there's a 2010 movie that one of my viewers sent me this morning, and it has a very profound clip in terms of predictive programming for both the Ohio situation in East Palestine and the pandemic. And so here's the clip.
Rhabdo Verde prototype.
Boop.
It was headed to an incinerator in Texas.
One biological weapon, check.
You're telling me that you guys engineered this crap?
It's designed to destabilize a population. In this case, the wrong one.
One destabilized population, check.
Look, fella, we lost a plane. What do you want me to say?
How about sorry for destroying your whole goddamn town?
One god, boop, town destroyed, check.
What would you have preferred, a global pandemic?
One global pandemic, check.
What is the incubation period?
48 hours. After that, you're either dead or you don't have it.
Fine.
So it's pretty self-explanatory there, right? Like, I don't think I have to add anything to this, whatever clip in this. You know, it's a cheesy 2010 horror movie, but it has that in it. So I want to start off with there are two documentaries my wife and I are one we're watching and the other one we watched on Netflix. We watched the murders, the murder, the murder with a name like Murda. I thought it was Murdoch, and I didn't really know anything about it until we watched the documentary, and then we watched this Malaysian jet crashing MH370. And this is the 777 Boeing plane that just disappeared into nowhere, and they're not sure what happened to it, right? And I want to start with this one. We're not done with the documentary. I think we watched parts 1 and 2. And so these are big stories that had a lot of sort of conspiracy theories, especially the plane one. A lot of different truthers. I remember truthers were covering this, but I didn't. I didn't cover this plane crash. I didn't get into it. But it shows you, the documentary shows you everything you need to know about the truth community. And, you know, going down the rabbit hole. It's very interesting. You know, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about both these things if you want to watch them. They're pretty well-made documentaries for, whatever, Netflix. So to do with the plane was in between two air traffic controllers in two different countries. One was Malaysia. They were flying out of Malaysia airspace and entering into Vietnam airspace. And so Vietnam was supposed to pick them up. And there's a period of time where you're kind of in no man's land. And the plane went dead. Everything was shut off at that moment. And so it disappeared. It couldn't be traced. And so there was some kind of British intelligence thing that they were doing with monitoring radar, and they had this device in the plane. And apparently the device was switched off and then back on again. And it shows the plane turning around and going either up the coast of, either going north towards India or south towards nothing, the Indian Ocean. And so the plane turned around inexplicably, and it was this loop where they didn't know exactly, the radar didn't know where it was, just how far away it was. And so it was like an arc of, if you take one of those old-fashioned compass and you draw a circle with it, it was equidistant. So it either went north and stayed on this arc-like path, or it was, it went south. South, it had nowhere to land. North, it was going to end up in, Kakistan or one of these countries. And so they blamed it on the pilot. And they said the pilot must have locked the co-pilot. Was a new co-pilot who didn't have any experience first flight. Pilot was a long time, was a old pro who had his own YouTube channel and made self-help videos and things caulking windows and talked about flying and things like this, right? And so they said the pilot was one of these people that committed suicide and took everybody with him, like it's happened before in airplanes. But it made no sense that he shut everything off and turned around and flew over a whole country, Malaysia, where he could have crashed into a building or a population center and taken more people with him. Like, none of it made sense, right? That he would, he could have put the plane down right where where they decided to, any time really, right? But the government was under a lot of pressure from the families, and it was, multinational families and things like this. And they were looking in two different places. There was another, some military radar picked up an object flying along this path, turning around and flying back towards this other path, right? And so that was the first hint that the plane might have turned around, and then there was the thing that Britain discovered. And without any debris, any bodies, any knowledge of where the plane went, the Malaysian government came out and said the plane went down somewhere in the Indian Ocean. Your families are dead, basically. And there was no, evidence to support this. And they blamed this pilot, right? And this drew outrage and, all these conspiracy theories and all these things. They were withholding information. It was like they just shut it down, right? So that's the official story. And the official story sucks, like oftentimes it does. And so then they showed the pilot. They showed the guy. And I'm like, this guy didn't do that. Like, you just tell. Like, he was, he had the softness in him. He didn't just decide one day to kill everybody. His sister was like, there's no way. And all the people that worked with him said he was a professional and just a good guy. And none of them believed it, like, all the coworkers. And just looking at the guy, you knew that he didn't do it, right? And so this is what I really want to talk about. So that's the official story. And so at some point, governments and, multinational governments, UN type of stuff, corporations, they come out with an official story. And it can just absolutely suck. But they're going to stick with it. We know that. We've seen this over and over again. I just covered it with Fuji, still claiming it's bats or animals, pangolin or something, right, for COVID. I mean, it's just all this, they have a lie, and they know if they backtrack on the lie, they're screwed. They've created a story, and they're just going to stonewall you, and there's nothing you can do. And the truth is never going to come out. And for me, as a truther, I don't say a truther, whatever I do here, I don't care about that anymore. Like most people do, I don't get sucked into it. I don't need to know this true story because of the overall understanding of what's going on, the collapse of our civilization. To me, it's just, we know that people are liars. And that's the issue, that people don't understand what people are capable of, what people are willing to do to protect themselves, protect a small group of people, protect their country, and what they'll do to everybody else in the world itself. People don't understand what kind of selfishness exists. But we know people will kill each other over $5. I mean, it happens, with homeless people or, whatever it is, poor people. They'll kill each other over $20, right? And so what about $1 billion or $1 trillion or whatever it is, or something even more substantial? People will kill other people for profit and, lie and lie and lie and lie, right? Once people develop the capacity to lie, it was over. Because lying is, at the center of it, dishonesty. And so with all the lies out there, you never get to the truth. And so this is where the documentary gets interesting, because then there is a second plane that gets shot down over, the Ukraine by Russia. And at the time, Russia is mobilizing some troops at the border of the Ukraine. That, of course, has connection to what's going on now in the world. And so first there's a French guy. It seems like a wealthy French man. And he had a wife and I think 2 kids on the plane. And somebody contacts him, and it's an intelligence person. And he says the Americans had 2 radar planes in the area, and they picked up everything. They know where the plane is. There's no doubt about it. And he gets interviewed. He goes on a lot of interviews. And the French paper, the Le Monde, which is famous for posting that anti-Muslim cartoon, you remember that whole controversy. And they had, whatever was going on there. They posted a picture of Muhammad. Remember, there was a whole thing with that around that period of time. And the reporter checks out the source. She meets with the source, and he's legitimate, and sounds like it's a real thing that the Americans know. And there's a guy who's at the center of this story. He's sort of the main character, like the main person who has a blog. And he was in a part of a group called the Independents, who were a bunch of, people, former pilots and engineers and people who are trying to figure out mathematically where the plane was. And he comes up with a theory that there were 3 Russians on the plane, and they hijacked the plane because they had access. The plane had in first class, it had a way that you can get down to the electronic workings of the plane and take over the plane and do all these things, right? And he said that they faked this British radar, device or whatever it was, and went north even though it looked like it went south, right? And he said they, hijacked the plane, brought it back to Russia, and they, cited the exact same plane for Malaysian Airlines that was shot down with a surface-to-air missile by the Russians, like three months later. So that's that's the Russian tie. Of course, he seems kind of a shill and blaming everything on Russia, which is commonplace, right? And that was a distraction from their invading the Ukraine back in 2000, whatever it was, 14 or whatever this happened. And he goes on TV and he's criticized for being a conspiracy theorist and all this, right? And the group that he's in, who's locked into the model that the plane went south, throw him out, right? And then there's a woman who found debris, because there was another group of people who was looking at the Indian Ocean, and they were all given like a certain segment, and she found a debris field that looked like what she thought was, parts of that plane in the ocean. And so this is what's great about the movie, because it's what happens in the truth community. People are all locked in what they think is the truth or their evidence or their point of view. The independent people throw that guy out of the group, right? Because he's gone north and they've gone south, right? And this is what happens. The government gives you a BS story. There's a point where the woman from the Le Mans says that they give us an official story and the official story is false. And so we know this happens. Governments lie, corporations lie, and the official story, whatever they're covering up. And it looks like there's multiple countries know what happened to the plane, and they're not saying what it is. It involves Chinese citizens, it involves Russia, it involves America, and then all these other countries, and then these other countries where citizens of those countries were on the plane, the families, and then there's all these conspiracy theories, and it hit the national media. I mean, I had no idea it was as big a story as it was, and it was covered by all these national media people, international media people, and all these theories are being floated out there, and it just makes a mess of it, right? You'll never get to the truth because there's just too much, BS out there. And we know this is what they do, right? They give you an illegitimate story. I mean, they give you a guy who's a president who's drooling on himself and has dementia, and they just never admit it. They never admit the guy can't do the job. And the media doesn't cover it because they're in on it or whatever it is, right? And, this is how it is now. And if you can beat your head against the wall, which people do, like freak out and just, get upset about it, or you can just accept you're never going to know because it doesn't really matter. It's all signs of a civilization that's collapsing of its own depravity and deception. And that's why I'm able to do this work, because I don't have to know. Like I don't, I'll give my best guess, but I don't, if I concentrate on it, maybe it'll come to me spiritually. The answer of what happened. Like I could do that, but I don't have to. I don't need to personally. And it's, you'll never know. Like all you need to know is that they're lying, and they're always lying. And then all these people with their different theories are lying to themselves, or they're attached to something, and they warp reality to fit their point of view, their confirmation bias, and it just always goes on like that. It just shows you the failure of the human race, right? The Murdaugh series is very similar to that. There's a power family in the Low Country in South Carolina. I'm familiar with the area because my wife and I got married there. So it's a place, that we, have a positive association with. And the family is, just a corrupt family. The guy's a lawyer. You guys probably know the story. You maybe even see the Netflix special. But there's kids who are involved, and they're just drinking. They're 16, 17 years old. Guy drives a boat drunk into a bridge, and a young girl dies. And, this a group of, the Murdoch kid is driving the boat, and it's just a whole thing. And it shows you, the just irresponsibility. Like, the parents have no idea what the kids are up to. This is just typical American youth getting drunk. I'm going to bars, and I mean, they go to a bar and the bar's never punished. It's just, certainly for the area there, but just life in general, the partying, the irresponsibility, and just all of it, right? Just the corruption, and just on a lower level where it's a person who has local power and authority, where you see this all over the place. There's a family that's above the law. And then, they come crashing down eventually, right? Guy's just been convicted, post the documentary. But I had heard of it. I thought his name was Murdoch. And now the fact that his name is Murdar, right? I mean, with a name like Murdar, what do you think it's going to end like? But this is why I call it the apocalypse, right? It's the collapse of something. It's moral degradation and stupidity and corruption and just lying all the time. And all people do is lie all the time, lie to themselves, or just go numb and just go unconscious, and the way that everyone behaves collectively, systemic abuse and depravity. And people are like, oh, it's this one group, the controllers, whatever you want to call them, and they're somehow worse than everybody else, and we would be fine if it wasn't for them. And I'm like, it's everybody. It's humanity. It's a failed species. It's a failed experiment. And so, there's going to be a possibility for change coming up. And, people will probably go the wrong way. It's just, we'll see. Maybe we won't be alive, but we'll be involved in some, most of us are stuck here to come back. We're trapped here. We can't, leave this cycle of, rebirth and whatever's going on here. We'll come back in a future life and, whatever. We'll have to deal with it. But let's get into, there's some headlines and things I'm going to get into today. But I just, if you notice there's a difference about me in terms of the way I present things, I don't need to know because I know I'm never going to know. Because there's just, there's the original theory, and then there's all the, alternative media theories and truther theories. There's the official story, and then there's just a bunch of other BS to, kind of figure out what the truth is, because the official story is bogus. You're never going to get to the bottom of it. When you do, it's dissatisfying. Years and years ago, I played the video game, the first, one of the first Mario Brothers video game. And it was a game that you had to play through. You couldn't turn it off and start back where you left off. So you had to win the game in one shot. And I stayed up till 2 or 3 in the morning trying to win the game. I got, good enough to get to the end. And I got to the end and I was like, oh, I don't feel good at all. I had just been playing video games for 6 hours or whatever. I'm like, this sucks, right? And, I've experienced that a lot in life where you follow a false path and you get the answer, and the answer is dissatisfying. And all of this stuff that if you ever get to the bottom of it, because even if you figure out what the truth is, nobody gets punished for it, at least in terms of the system. In terms of the divine laws, people don't get away with anything. Everything is accounted for. But you don't see it in the system. You won't see it in the system. Maybe not even in this life. But, everybody gets what they deserve. Everyone has to pay for their so-called sins. And so, once you have faith in God and that there is a plan, you can, unburden yourself, right? You don't have to, bear the burden of knowing, right? Getting to the bottom of things. Anyways, let's Speaking to the bottom of things, let's go look at some of the headlines here. So let's start here with World War III, which is inevitable, right? For me at least, that there'll be, this is part of the destruction of the global system, nuclear war, and part of the predictions and the whispers of the brighter world. So for me, I've accepted World War III will be something that I will probably witness. Many of you younger people certainly will. And it could be sooner than later. Russia says it will try to retrieve drone after warning U.S. to stop hostile flights near its borders. So there is a U.S. drone over, international waters, but close to Russia in the Black Sea. And one of their fighter jets ran into a drone. It's just getting closer and closer towards war, right? Like war is something America has wanted with Russia since Russia war blocked them in Syria. We, saw this. Many of you guys saw it. And so here's...
A Russian fighter jet and a US drone colliding in midair is the kind of contact NATO has been desperate to avoid since the war in Ukraine began.
Come on. They want war with Russia. They're trying to provoke Russia since Syria. Everyone can see it.
The Su-27 Russian plane hit the Reaper drone's propeller, bringing it down, according to the US European Command.
This incident demonstrates a lack of competence in addition to being unsafe and unprofessional.
Russia, where President Putin was recently...
Okay, let me go back and find a bunch of my... these were headlines that I had in... I'll put them in here. I'll find these headlines. But this was when Russia was bombing ISIS in Syria, because ISIS was a U.S. ally, U.S. creation. ISIS didn't do anything while Trump was president, because Trump didn't order them to do anything. And so Russia was bombing ISIS, and both America and Britain threatened Russia and told them to stop, right? And so, this, we have, these were American headlines and European headlines. This is, what's happening. And ever since then, it's been Russia, Russia, Russia. Blaming them for everything. And I'm not, a Russia fan or a Putin fan, but you just, be honest, right? So I was looking for these images. It's in a file called ISIS. It took me a while to figure that out. This is Bob the Plumber, this Bob the Plumber story. This is Bob the Plumber's truck being driven by ISIS in Iraq. That's Bob the Plumber. Bob the Plumber was getting harassed by his neighbors in Houston. His friends were calling him and leaving messages going, "Hey, Bob, why'd you sell your truck to ISIS?" Right? And it turned out an American company was selling Toyota trucks to ISIS, used trucks, and shipping them over there to Iraq. And Bob said he sold it to this company who then sold it to ISIS. And so that happened. So here are 3 articles. RAF, this is British Air Force, Royal Air Force, whatever it is, given green light to shoot down hostile Russian jets in Syria. This was about the Russians bombing ISIS and Britain and America saying no. And they both told them to stop. Here's another headline. RAF jets cleared to fire on Russia. Tornado warplanes can launch missiles if threatened. Russia summons Britain's military attaché over RAF permission to shoot down warplanes. And there was stuff about Obama here too. I can't find it all. But then these were interesting to do with ISIS here. It says, ISIS fighters take over major Libyan oil fields. How does ISIS get its money? And then there was oil fields in Iraq. These were oil fields in Iraq that ISIS just took over. And we could have stopped them at any time because they had to drive across the desert to get them. So ISIS had oil fields that Americans let them take over. And it's because they were an American asset, right? And Russia was blocking all that in Syria. And America and Britain said no. And this is where all the tensions started to create war with Syria. John McCain. In a meeting in the White House over a year ago, everyone in the national security team recommending arming ISIS. We're speeding up training of ISIS forces. Obama said that. The video's out there somewhere. I gotta, I'd find it someday. Who cares, right? ISIL forces. And so, it's all right there. White House eyes accountability for Silicon Valley Bank collapse. We'll get more into that as we go through. Dems who back Trump bank deregulation still won't budge. This is the main headline from Huffington Post, blaming Trump, which Biden did. I'll get to that also. House panel set to review Biden's family's suspicious records. So let's start here with Biden's speech. A lot of good mockable stuff here, I'm sure, because he always is. This is our incompetent leader. At some point, he is going to blame Trump's.
California, I want to briefly speak about what's happening in Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. Today, thanks to the quick action of my administration over the past few days.
This administration's quick action. They did it. They know how to deal with these, the world collapsing around us. He's quick action. Good job, you and your administration.
Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe.
It's safe. Don't pull your money out because my team and our quick action, we got it done.
Your deposits will be there when you need them.
Exactly, except when they won't. Up until the point that they won't. But all the rest of the time, they're there.
Small businesses across the country, the deposit accounts at these banks can breathe easier knowing they'll be able to pay their workers and pay their bills.
Exactly, until you won't. It'll work until it doesn't.
And their hardworking employees can breathe easier as well. Last week, when we learned of the problems of the banks and the impact they could have on jobs of small businesses and banking system overall, I instructed my team to act quickly to protect these interests.
Exactly. We acted quickly because, it's not our job to prevent something like this from happening or be aware that it could. We're just there to, act quickly after the fact.
They've done that. On Friday, the government regulator in charge, the FDIC, took control of Silicon Valley Bank's assets. And
touch your nose, you frickin'... You don't have a mask anymore.
Over the weekend, it took control of Signature Bank's assets. Treasury Secretary Yellen and a team of banking regulators have taken action.
They're taking actions. They're just getting it done, taking that action.
Immediate action.
Checking it twice, trying to figure out who's been naughty or nice.
Here are the highlights. First, all customers who had deposits in these banks can rest assured they'll be protected and they'll have access to their money as of today. That includes small businesses across the country that bank there and need to make payroll, pay their bills.
They don't have your money. Like banks don't have your money. Whether they collapse or not, they don't have your money. They don't have the money to give you back. The money can never be given back, right? It's loaned out to other people in the fractional reserve system. The banks don't have enough money to give everybody their money back. So you can never cash out, right? I mean, it's just, that game you played when you were a kid, Hot Potato or Wonder Ball, right? Where, or musical chairs. Somebody's not sitting down, right? Some people are not getting their money back. You might, the people who are old, sure. Social Security, it's just like with Social Security. Some group of people, and I'm, probably going to be a part of that group, and it's going to be sooner than later, won't get paid their Social Security, right? There just won't be any money left. You're not going to have it. All the money you put in isn't ever going to be given back to you. The money you put into the bank isn't going to come back to you. It's not your money. You gave it to the bank, and they've done something with it. And if everybody went to all the banks and tried to get their money out, there would be, a few people who would, and everyone else would get nothing, right? Like that's how our system works. And, and then again, at some point, it's just going to collapse altogether.
Stay open for business. No losses will be, and this is an important point, no losses will be borne by the taxpayers. Let me repeat that. No losses will be borne by the taxpayers.
That's how the FDIC works. It's a federal, bank insurance company, and it's run by our money, right? Collective money. You start paying people off,
Instead, the money will come from the fees that banks pay into the deposit insurance fund. Because of the actions that our regulators have already taken, every American should feel confident that their deposits will be there if and when they need them.
Yeah, they won't. They're not. I already explained this. You're a liar.
Second, the management of these banks will be fired. If the bank is taken over by FDIC, the people running the bank should not work there anymore. Third,
They're going to be fired. They're going to lose their job at a broke-ass bank. You're going to be fired from your broke-ass bank.
investors in the banks will not be protected. They knowingly took a risk, and when the risk didn't pay off, investors lose their money. That's how capitalism works.
It does? That's how it works?
And fourth, there are important questions of how these banks got into the circumstance in the first place.
Good. Here it is.
We must get the full accounting of what happened and why those responsible can be held accountable. In my administration, no one is above the law. And finally,
except for your son and you and, other people that connected to you.
we must reduce the risk of this happening again. During the Obama-Biden administration, we put in place tough requirements on banks like Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank.
What happened? If those things were in there, what happened? Who took those things away?
Including the Dodd-Frank law to make sure that the crisis we saw in 2008 would not happen again.
Exactly. It was all safe. You guys did a great job. What happened then? What happened to the thing?
Unfortunately, the last administration rolled back some of these requirements.
Oh, it's Trump's fault, which actually, is kind of true. I mean, not that Biden Obama got it done, but Trump, the bankers love Trump because Trump is a deregulation guy, So, as much as JoJo Madonna's a liar, there's actually a sliver of truth here.
I'm going to ask Congress and the banking regulators to strengthen the rules for banks to make it less likely this kind of bank failure would happen again.
Well, then the economy is going to plummet. See, the reason the economy was doing well under Trump was he deregulated everything. But, then they go out and they do all kinds of scams and they do all kinds of, Ponzi pump and dump type of things, right? And then derivatives market explodes again. And then the same thing happens over and over again. So if you regulate everything, the economy shrinks. You deregulate everything, the economy expands until it explodes and people lose money. This is, the cycle that we're in. Let's move on to the next thing here. Regulator sees Signature Bank, third largest U.S. bank, failure. No need to talk about that. JoJo Madonna already did. Okay, one of my viewers sent me this. This is one Madam J expiration date. She keeps on dyeing the roots of her hair black for some reason. I don't understand why. And she, let's just see it here.
All right, I can't talk anymore. Can't you see I'm working?
Can you see she's working? She's working, right? Like she's, always bitchy in these things, but, trying to keep it real. I mean, she's so fake, but she gets real about being bitchy, right?
Yeah, I was wondering which part you were at. All right.
Okay, what is happening there? Those look like alien feet, like some kind of... What's happened? Like, why did they put men's alien feet on her body?
Okay, shut the curtain.
Right, well.
On the sliding door that says do not enter. Clearly it was effective, that sign.
Very effective.
She's just tells everyone what to do, right?
I smell like Jamaica.
There are worse smells.
There's worse smells, like, I'm not going to say it. But Madonna says she smells like Jamaica.
It's not, I don't smell like cannabis. I promise you. It's just like a weird, sweat.
It smells like ghoul, right? I mean, that's the smell of ghoul. She's giving you the finger subtly here. This is her TikTok video. She yells at, I think that was one of her kids, says, I'm working here, shows some alien feet, and then starts sniffing her armpit. This is her TikTok video. She thinks this is quality TikTok. This is what she's getting into now.
It's like the sweat of plantains and coconuts and jerk chicken.
And Ghoul.
I think I might make some people mad. I'm not sure.
I mean, we have to make some people mad.
Yeah.
Making people mad is Madonna's Madam Expiration Date's number one thing. Shocking them and making them mad. She wouldn't have a career otherwise. She would have made no money, no career, if she didn't purposely piss people off and cause controversy. Right? It's been well documented.
Yeah, you're not really doing your job right if you don't make some people mad.
Exactly.
Do you have to do that thing with your tongue?
Don't hurt yourself. Don't knock over the Japanese screen. The privacy screen that's providing us with absolutely no privacy. Bye, Diablo.
The devil. She named one of her kids the devil. So that's Madam Expiration Date. That's what she thinks of as a quality TikTok video. James Comer, I think is how you pronounce it. Treasury reports show Biden family made millions from Chinese company after 2016. Received $3 million wire transfer from a Chinese energy company in subsequent payments. You know, we knew this from that guy, right? Bubalinsky. House Oversight Committee James Comer announced upon receiving suspicious activity reports from the Treasury this week. You know, that ain't happening, right? I mean, they're not going to jail, so. But he's, owned by China, so that's cool. Russia should unleash nuclear torpedo on the U.S., state TV says. Yeah, if you know we are to believe Hungarian Orban, or if they're really about to deploy troops in the Ukraine, well, it will all end with a Poseidon and a tsunami, a 300 or 400 meter wave. So that's what the guy says. And then Great Britain will be no more. Cool. Right? Well, that's where we are right now. Poseidon waves and tsunami and whatever else they got going on. This driver is not bluffing. Don't think I won't brake check you. Because they've done it before. Don't tailgate that dude. You just it's the year of the F it, right? The year of the boop it, right? Like people just don't care. You can see it more and more. You even in your own, you start caring less and less, right? And then there was this. So there's this guy. They're showing a crash here. There's two cars. There's a car upside down here, and then Jesus Christ drives by. Okay, so I meant to cover this in the beginning of the video, but I forgot. So this is my other channel, Pock Laughs Now, and I uploaded a bunch of shorts, including one from an old Saline video. And one of my viewers left a comment saying, reminding me of this video and said, where you say this is the thing she was talking about.
Hi there, it's Celine.
Wait, you pronounce your name Celine? What is going on? Why does everyone else say Celine? Hey, it's Celine.
Hi there, it's Celine.
Hey, Celine. It's Paul. Are you alive? So it goes on from there. And so I realized I watched this video and I pulled a bunch of clips from it. And I was like, I'm pretty mean. Like,
But I have to admit, it's been a struggle. All I know is singing. It's what I've done all my life. And it's what I love to do the most.
wow, you're really milking this thing, huh? Right? And I was thinking about this before the video, but this is a good example of it. That I have thought Tourette's, Tourette's syndrome. But again, I don't know if they changed the name of that. And again, this isn't derogatory towards people with that disease or whatever it is, condition. But I have these thoughts that I don't say out loud. Like I meet somebody and like I always, it's not all the time, but oftentimes something happens and the worst possible thing I could say to the person pops into my head, right? It could be a stranger, it could be whatever it is, right? My wife says she has like some similar things. So maybe everyone has a little bit of this. But on this channel, I just say them, right? Like I wouldn't say this stuff to Celine, if I was in a conversation with her. But it's what I'm here by myself. And there's two other ones that are even worse than those two. But I was like, oh, wow. Because I don't watch my own stuff. I'm always editing or working. It's not the same thing. But I realize I say things all the time that are, definitely mean, right? But anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely born from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.